Okay, and then Not Mike says, we've got a Not Mike? Wait a minute, how did that happen? Yes, it's a Steve. Well, if it's not a Mike, it's probably going to be a Steve. It's a comic book field. My questions for Dave as follows. Some while ago, the old AV warehouse got cleaned out of the Cerebus inventory. And from what I remember, the comics were going to a shop that would distribute them at cons. Whatever actually happened to that inventory? That would be Wes's Kitchener Comic Book Warehouse, which is exactly what it sounds like. A comic book store the size of the warehouse at the end of Citizen Kane. 3310 King Street East in Kitchener. 519-748-0555. And September 2015 was when record distribution in Leamington, Ontario closed, and Sandeep and Fisher and I went down there to clean our stuff out with a number of Cerebus fan volunteers agreeing to show up and help us. It was actually a good 3/4 of a semi-truck that we filled that ran them up from Leamington to the storage unit that we've got here in town now, and trying to remember how the whole thing went. I do remember all those boxes coming in, and it was a ton of books that we had that we moved up from Leamington here, and then it was one of Rolly's first job working for Aardvark Van Anaheim, and Fisher and Sandy, they had a table and 3 chairs set up at the storage unit, and would bag and board 3 comics in a plastic bag with a promotional giveaway front on it. And as those were filled up, then we would take them over to Wes at the Comic Book Warehouse. And I phoned Wes today to ask him how is he doing on those? Does he still have 3/4 of a semi truck of Cerebus back issues at various spots around Comic Book Warehouse? And he reminded me that actually Alfonso got most of those, and that's the guy that you're thinking of that was taking them to comic book convention and really used them to sort of make the name of Studio Comics Press better known in Southern Ontario. Here's the guy that brings Cerebus comics to the conventions and hands them out to people. And as Wes said, that's how most of the books went up. We would have to ask Alfonso, but I think he probably gave away 8,000, 10,000 comics. So Wes said there are probably still boxes of Cerebus back issues over there from the Leamington warehouse, and he would be happy to try and take a look for them. And that was when I said to him on the phone, how about this as a deal that I'm going to be announcing this on Please Hold for Dave Sim, and I have people at various times saying I'm coming into Kitchener. Is there a possibility that I could have coffee with you or lunch with you? I'm coming up from wherever, Florida, to visit relatives, and I don't do that very often because, again, there's only so many hours in the day. I don't know how many years I've got left. I don't know how many more pages Strange Death of Alex Raymond is going to be. But if you want a genuine Kitchener experience definitely you want to see the Kitchener Comic Book Warehouse out on the highway. You don't usually see comic stores out on the highway with the sign Comic Book Warehouse visible from the highway, so that any comic book fan goes, "Huzzle! Wow! Did I really see that? Did that say comic book?" You don't. And once you're on the highway, you don't usually see any kind of sign that says comic book. And yes, it is the Comic Book Warehouse. And I said to Wes, what we're going to tell people is, if you're coming from out of town, from near out of town, or from distantly out of town, and you go to the Comic Book Warehouse, just ask for Wes. He's in there pretty much every day, and just say, "Wes, Swordfish," and that will be your cue to Wes that he's got to give you a really good deal. All of the really good deals are going to be different depending on, first of all, what your interests are. And if you can't find something that you want to buy at Wes's Comic Book Warehouse, you're not a real comic book fan. So picture a comic book store the size of the warehouse at the end of Citizen Kane. Picture yourself going in there and looking at all of the stuff that you would really like to have, and finding the stuff and going, "Here's something I can afford, here's something that I can't afford." Take those over to Wes and go, "Wes, Swordfish," and say, "Yes, I did hear that on Please Hold for Dave Sim, and I understand that I can get a deal. What deal can I get on this comic book or these comic books?" And depending on whether Wes is in the situation of needing a few bucks, you probably get a better deal. If Wes just sold a bunch of mint EC comics, probably not going to get as good a deal. That's all part of the luck of the draw.
That's good. That's a good deal.
Swordfish lives on.
I'm really happy that Swordfish wasn't a one-time thing, that it just struck the nerve of, yeah, that's just served us enough that Swordfish is going to, it's going to stay around for a long time.
Yes. The Swordfish will never die.
That was...
Go ahead.
One of the things that we had planned on doing with my dad when we went down to visit him was, he's got a bunch of books. He was cleaning out his apartment. He's got books, and he's like, "Do you want these?" And I'm like, he's like, "Stephen King. I have all the Stephen King books. Do you want them?" I'm like, "Well, I have all the Stephen King books, so I don't need them." And he's like, "Okay, well then I'm getting rid of them." So he boxed those up. He had a bunch of Tom Clancy books that, "Do you want these?" I'm like, "Not really." And he asked my brother. My brother's like, "No." And so, okay, those went in the box. So he had 4 or 5 boxes of books, and he wanted to take them to the half-price bookstore to sell them, but the problem is that, because my dad only has one eye now, because he had a mini-stroke, and it cut off the blood to his eye, so his left eye he can see a pinprick, that's it. And
Yay!
And he can drive, but the problem is he gets tunnel vision when he drives, so if he doesn't know where he's going and he turns his head to see something, he misses what's going. Basically he white knuckle drives everywhere, and I'm like, "Dad, you really got to stop driving." And he's like, "Yeah, I know." But he only drives once a week, and it's he drives up to the bar for steak on Thursday, and then he drives home, and he can get there and back. It's only like a mile or two. But the half-price bookstore, this involves getting on one highway and getting onto another highway and getting off at this exit and turning left at this set of lights and then going this far to find the place on. And it's like, "Okay, Dad, I'll take you there." So we go there, and he brings in his boxes of books to get an offer, and we have time to kill. And it's a half-price bookstore. I could spend all day there and still not see everything I want to see. And
right.
I immediately whipped out my phone and went, okay, I had an email I sent myself of, these are the comics I'm looking for from the last time I went to the comic book store, and I'm looking for like 3 issues of Spider-Man 2099. because those are the only three I don't have. And so I'm going through the S's, and I found Savage Dragon. And I'm like, okay. And like, okay, I'm pulling them out because Savage Dragon back issues are kind of worth money. And these are all really low numbered, too. Like, I found a copy of Savage Dragon #1 in the regular series, and I'm like, for $1.50, I will buy this. And
I would say.
And my dad keeps coming up to me because he's still waiting to get his offer, and he's like, "Are you going to buy all these comics?" I'm like, I don't know, I'm thinking about it. And I'm adding to the stack, and I found a copy of She-Cyblade, The Battle for Independence #1, and I'm like, even though I own this, I'm going to buy a copy because it's one of them service rarities that, people find out about it, like, well, how come I didn't know about this? Well, because you weren't buying She in the 90s.
I guess.
And then, and it was one of these, I found the comic, I pulled it up to see what it was, because I was verifying that, yes, I am seeing what I'm seeing, and I immediately added to the stack, and I'm like, I'm buying this, and my dad was standing next to me going, well, why? I'm like, well, because I kind of had a hand in it, and it's a copy of Super Service versus COVID-19. And even though I have a whole bunch of them, for $2, I have to buy it, because it's in the wild. And then I found there was another Service in Hell one-shot that I found, and I'm like, okay, I'm buying that. And then I'm like, well, I'll go over to the Seas and see if they have any Service back issues. And I found like 4 more Service in Hell one-shots. And I'm going, I don't think I have these. So yeah, I'll definitely buy these. And I got home and I own most of them. But it's like, well, now I have giveaway copies.
Right.
It's the beauty. Right. It's the beauty of digging through old boxes of comics is you'll find something that you can't live without.
That's right. What offer did your dad get eventually?
Like $40. Which the problem is they give you half of what they're gonna make, and they sell most of those books for like $8. You're only gonna get 2, 3, maybe $4 a book, depending on what it is. And of course, as we're leaving, I walked past the display case that's locked of these are the rare first editions that are going for, big money. And I walked past it, saw something, went up to my dad who was at the check. I'm like, hey, do you got $1,500 that I can have? And he's like, why? I'm like, you want to go in and buy a first edition, first print copy of Carrie? And he's like, I just sold all my Stephen King books. No! But it's a first print, Dad!
That's right. That's right. Well, you want to talk about addictions and servicing the fentanyl people in our society where they're not specifically fentanyl junkies. There's a good example. I mean, the store could offer, bring in a comic book collector and we'll give you 20% more. For the books that you're selling us, because we're going to make out like bandits.
What my dad found a couple CDs that he wanted, and then he found he's into Joss Whedon's Firefly TV series, and they made a movie, and he's been asking me to find him the movie, and I'm really lazy, and I've been like, yeah, okay, sure, I'll get to it. Well, I found 2 issues of one of the comic book adaptations of this. And my dad's like, oh, I'll buy those. And I'm like, well, if you go look in the graphic novel section, they might have the collected version. And yep, they had the collected version, so he bought those instead. And then when he was checking out, the guy's like, oh, we have the movie on DVD if you want it. And Dad's like, oh, yeah, sure, give me that. And then he bought a couple of the comics I was going to buy. So he ended up, out of his 40 whatever offer, he ended up coming out with like 11 cents. Because that's how it works. You bring in a box of books, they buy them from you, and then you spend it in the store. That's their business model.
Right.
And
right.
I'm a little annoyed because I was going through the comics, and they were kind of rushing me, and I'm like, okay, but I still wanted to look at the graphic novels, because my rule of thumb is if I walk into half-price books and there's a service trade, I will buy it. Because I don't find them that often. And, of course, I'm in St. Louis now, and I haven't been to this store, so there's a good chance they have a Wallace service that people went, oh, no, we don't need this in our lives anymore. And I didn't get to look.
There are so many different kinds of fentanyl, in our society. It's the same as the gambling junkies, where I finally figured out, okay, I bought whatever it was, $100, $200 worth of tokens, and I've been sitting, at the computerized poker machine and playing poker with a machine and trying to make the money last as long as I can. And, for the amount of money, even if I had a winning day in the casino, the amount of money that I made, it worked out that I was probably making $2 an hour for all of this heavy lifting, figuring out odds, and okay, I'm gonna stand. Okay, I'll take another card. All that kind of stuff, playing blackjack. And it's like, if somebody made that a job and said, we're going to pay you $2 an hour to do that, it would be, you're crazy. I'm worth far more than that. But here, this is entertainment. It's like, oh, I'm in. Give me another $200 worth of chips.
Right.
Crazy, crazy, crazy people.